Hello again to everybody. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to introduce the moderator of our next panel, Mr. Aleksandar Medjedovic, Executive Board Member of Turkish-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Medjedovic, the floor is yours again.
And I love the way you just said again. It is again, of course, a pleasure to be with you at this year's summit at the Belgrade Economic Forum. It is a pleasure to have interesting speakers and interesting panelists, and it's overall a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel Improving Cooperation in IT and Innovation. Hot topic, particularly if you have listened to our previous panel, they were talking about health. And I got that very, very bad gut feeling that all that talking about the health system is great, but it's simply going to break down without a good digital infrastructure and without synchronizing and cooperating on it. And I think in that respect, worldwide, around the world, we have lots to do. Welcome to our panel. I would like to introduce myself very briefly. For those who don't know me, Aleksandar Medjedovic. I am completely irrelevant to the subject and the panel. I'm just going to make sure that we get the most out of our dear panelists, because they're all experts in their own field, and above all of that, they're strategists and international actors. I have many functions, but I would like to mention the one that I'm most familiar with. I have been living for a very long time in Turkey, and as you can imagine, in Turkey there's a lot going on. It's a highly dynamic country, dynamic economy, not without its problems, but with a great future ahead, and also technologically very advanced. And I work in the field of Turkish-German cooperation. I am at the Turkish-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Berlin, and this is where I am right now. I am in Germany, and we always say Germany has the best infrastructure in the world. I can only say that is not true. We have the same problems. I just want to mention one thing. The day Donald Trump was, the day Joe Biden was elected as US president, the internet was incredibly slow. And we were all asking ourselves, why is that? You know, why today things are not working? Well, because a lot of people are communicating, watching to Washington. So even events very far away, we have lots of things that can influence us. And then it's of course very important that we have cooperation on all fields. So to talk about that and to talk about how we can advance in that, in the region as well as outside of the region, we have 4 excellent panelists with us. I would like to introduce them very briefly, and then later on they will tell us about their activities. We have with us today His Excellency Jahel Vilan, Ambassador of the State of Israel to the Republic of Serbia. We have Dr. Sanja Popovic-Pantic, President of the Association of Businesswomen of Serbia, and Sanja also works at the Mihailo Pupin Institute, which is a center of excellence in Serbia. Sanja will tell us more about it. We have Mrs. Kori Udovicki. She's the founder and member of the managing board of Center for Advanced Economic Studies, and that's commonly known as CEVES in Serbia and internationally. And if I might say, Mrs. Udovicki was also our minister and deputy prime minister in one of the previous governments in Serbia. Extensive experience from the private sector, from the public sector, and of course from there where they overlap. And last but not least, we have our dear friend Zoran Tadic. Zoran is the CEO of a company which is called Neofyton. It's a company like many others, you would say, in Serbia and in the region and all around the world. But Zoran, and I will tell you why it is so special, because it's a company with the investments in technology in the right place at the right time, and also very internationally operating. So I would like to thank our panelists, and I think our panelists will join me in thanking our dear friends at Tsomokos Group International. Doing anything these days is difficult. Getting together so many people from around the world and from many corners is difficult. Circumstances are difficult. And I'm very glad that you're doing this panel. Our dear friend Simeon, thank you very much for bringing people again together. And all I can say, it's the best event in the year in Serbia, and it's great to be with you. And go on. And next year we will meet, of course, live in Serbia. I'm convinced we will. So without further ado, I would like to go into the panel. We have about 1 hour time, and it's excellent to reflect on the many things also that were discussed during the summit in these last 2 days. I mentioned one is, of course, healthcare, and inevitably we come into the question, you know, we have so many challenges. I'm watching news these days, and they're already talking about how we will distribute the vaccine. who will be vaccinated at what time, how to organize this incredible logistic. And it's very, very clear that a very heavy support, technological support, will be required for that. And I cannot imagine one single country around the world that can do that logistics and support alone. So there's going to be some sort of cooperation, and we better do it now. Otherwise, I was just going to use that horrible word. Otherwise, we will be dead, literally. If we don't cooperate, if we don't go together and use our energy and forces, it's going to be very, very difficult to get back on track. And one country that has been very successful in innovation and IT in everything is Israel. There are so many schlagwords, there are so many characterizations for Israel: hub of innovation, hub of the Middle East, European hub. Where are you? Are you in Europe or Asia or the Middle East? So it's very difficult to even define and to hear what's going on there. What I can assure, it's a great country to be. As a very young person, and I mean as a very young person, I've spent a bit longer time in Israel, and our biggest difficulty was to find a functioning phone booth that can make international phone calls, so I could call my parents and tell them I'm all right. And that was in the early 80s or in the mid 80s. Since then, a lot of things have changed. Israel has become an innovator, a place where things are going on, and we are lucky to have the ambassador of the State of Israel with us, whom I've read is an excellent person to know and to learn about Israel's advancements. So, Your Excellency, what is Israel doing right? Because obviously you are doing a few things right. Why is it that you and your ecosystem, I'm not talking about the government only, I'm talking about the many, many entrepreneurs that you have, young ones, dynamic ones, internationally operating. What's the secret of success in Israel to innovate?
Well, thank you very much, Aleksandar. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and I want to join you in the congratulating the organizer. I think it's important. It's always nice to see that we can still come together in a way in these hectic and difficult times that we're all facing. And I'm also happy that you said what we are doing as a country, not as a government. You know, I'm representing of the government, but also of the state and the people. And definitely the government has a role, but I would argue it's not the main role, because long time ago, I had the opportunity to host, when I was the deputy ambassador in India, our then Minister of Economy, Mr. Naftali Bennett, who was before becoming politician, was in the Ict sector. So he said in some kind of a similar event, or we brought him to speak in one of the main technology universities in India, and he said, look, governments don't do business, they don't really doing things. You know, we can facilitate, and I think that was the role of the Israeli government. But definitely, if you don't have innovative spirit, if you don't have the right people, the right minds, the right DNA, I would say, in Israel, so governments can be, you know, as efficient as they like. I'm not sure we are the most efficient one, by the way, but I think we did do a few things right mostly from the, I think, the early and mid 90s. And I'm happy you said you experienced Israel also before in the mid 80s. It was definitely a different country. But I think like many other fields, we can also talk in other opportunities about Israeli agriculture success story. And it was also based on good cooperation between private sector, between academia. We have very good research centers, again, also in agriculture, but also here, and the government. And I think the good thing that the government did in Israel was to identify the strengths that we have in Israel in, let's say, a relatively early stage, and building the right ecosystem in which, first and foremost, our young entrepreneurs, innovators will have the best platforms, best ecosystem to operate, as well as, which I think, especially in the Israeli case, but maybe in any other case as well, very important factor to attract the multinationals, the foreign investors. And they found, or they explored very early, the potential in the Israeli market, and they came in huge numbers. So even from financial point of view, I think by now on every dollar the government ever spent, we earned way more because of this collaboration. So I think what the main role of the government, I will end here because I'm sure we'll have later on time for questions. I think the government created and facilitated the best possible ecosystem for our, again, mostly young people, innovative brains coming out of mostly, in the military service. The military service also adjusted itself to become a powerhouse for young entrepreneurs coming straight from the army with great ideas and translate them into new ideas and
into opportunities.
Opportunities, definitely. And together with the universities, we have the highest percentage of engineers in Israel. The universities, again, I think in early stage, if I compare it to the other parts of the world, were able to think of ways how to translate the enormous knowledge that is accumulated in universities into and channel it into a more, let's say, commercial or business-oriented. And if maybe I will end here and we can take it from there later on.
Ambassador, you mentioned a lot of factors that need to be right for success, that need to be set right by all the actors, a lot of important points. I will ask you a little bit later for some examples from Israel. Maybe you can already think about them while we speak to our other panelists. But as Ambassador mentioned, there are a lot of factors coming together. One is the readiness to innovate. One is the functioning ecosystem, education, timing, very important. And when we speak of timing, I would like to ask our next panelist, Kori Udovicki. I would like to travel now from beautiful and admittedly now more sunny Israel to our little region here, to the Balkans, to Serbia and its neighboring ecosystems. And Kori, you have been working as a member of government in very difficult times, and then at the overlap with the private sector, and now working with a lot of private sector representatives on making them think in a different way, on being innovators. The difficult question is the region ready? Is Serbia ready for the challenges that we have ahead? What needs to be done, if anything, and I assume there is, what needs to be done? And most of what would be interesting, Ambassador was mentioning the people are ready. Are Serbian, Macedonian, Bosnian people ready to embrace the changes? And changes are massive, as we know right now. Where are we in the region?
Thank you very much, Mr. Medjedovic, and also Ambassador Vilan. I'm so glad that you gave this first, not introduction, but speech, because one can really refer to this example, and it makes my job much easier. I would like to take a few minutes or less than a few minutes, probably, hopefully a few dozen seconds, to reflect a little on where this emergence is coming from at present. There is something that economists like to call a global common of knowledge and capacity, a technological know-how that was created in the Yugoslav times through investment above all in highly excellent education when it comes to engineering at the time. It was, upon transition, it was even deemed to be excessively theoretical and high level for the sort of economy that we had in the early 2000s. And it also had a number of industries that had been doing poorly from an economic point of view for a long time and then imploded in the 90s. But that, again, technically and technologically, were at a high level. And, when CNC machines were introduced globally, or appeared first in the US, actually, less than a few years later, Serbia had its machines on an exhibition in the US, and so on. We knew how to make things, not necessarily how to make them economically. That disappeared, of course, with the implosion that happened in the 90s, And then we had a very slow restructuring of our economy in the 2000s. Most people are aware that we actually were not really able to transform and sell or privatize most of our bigger technological systems. They dissipated. And time does its work. Not everything disappeared. This know-how, little by little, I cannot say how big a share of it, but it was rescued almost by chance. We have been analyzing and talking about the histories of small and medium enterprises that are forward-coming, that export to dozens of countries, not to speak of the IT sector, of which I'll speak in a second. Every time they have emerged as almost the coincidence of these remnants of know-how, and then entrepreneurship and a link to some market, usually abroad, or at least a capacity to eventually link to abroad. So what is the problem with this history is that what we right now still don't have, and it's similar with the IT sector, a huge supply of population with an excellent education and capacity to do programming or to speak several languages, did not really have an economy to attach itself to. So we have one of the biggest, if not the biggest population per capita of freelancers on internet platforms, and where our IT industry has been most successful at first, has been in gaming, in blockchain, and so on. Not necessarily only, but it is in areas where, in fact, it is not connected to anything else. So our biggest challenge is, yes, this is now growing, global demand is growing, connections have increased, because actually since the global financial crisis, there has been a long stretch of growth in the global economy, and they have been looking for cheap, sophisticated labor, let's say competitive, not cheap, sophisticated labor, and have encountered us. Digital solutions, the digital technology has made us capable of connecting where the demand is, but what is missing is an organic connection in the ecosystems of the sort that Ambassador Vilan spoke about. Or Vilan, you have to tell us how to pronounce your last name well, Ambassador, please. But this is why, while the government cannot make this happen, I think the government needs to be extremely aware of the problem of there not being these clusters of know-how and environments that actually create a virtuous cycle, feedback loops. One innovator comes with something, another one steals that person and comes up with something else. Somebody applies it. We are like an army of soldiers directed and connecting to the outside world, and not connecting enough between our traditional and IT industry. And IT cannot replace that connection. The environment needs to be created for that to happen.
And that's a lot on the plate of the relatively small regional economies, because we have very underperforming regional economies. They could do much more. They will do much more. Particularly the SME sector is playing a big role, and we couldn't have two better people to talk about that than our following panelists. The SME sector could have a much bigger output, and much more investments are needed. But there is the problem of technology. There is also a problem of sustainability. There is a problem of the, if I can address it, of the gender gap, because still I, from time to time, have a feeling that it's still a man's world in the Balkans, to be very honest, although these 2 days have proven that this is completely wrong, because we have great female leadership in the public and in the private sector. But still, I think you all know what I talk about, this feeling that we are still this society which is a little bit running after on that. And I'd like to ask Sanja Pantic for her opinion. Now, Sanja is a specialist, is a consultant specialized in female entrepreneurship, SME sector, and a few other activities. And Sanja, I think one of your major concern is the gender gap and is sustainability. Are we making the right investments? Is it only high tech and machinery and good IT systems, or is there something missing in the way we're building sustainability?
Yes, thank you, Aleksandar. And I would not say that this is only the feeling about the gender gap that you mentioned, but it is also evidence-based. But maybe I will talk about that later on. But regarding this focus to the innovation in ICT sector, I would like to say a few words. It is really amazing what has been done so far regarding the building of the innovation infrastructure in ICT sector in Serbia, and I guess in the region as well, in some countries in the region. And of course, ICT sector is the biggest generator of the innovations. But it is now the question, is it because the big investments or the bigger one are coming into this sector comparing to other sectors? Or it is like it is self-generating the innovations per se. I would argue a little bit to that concept because what I can see at the EU level and within Enterprise Europe network, which is the biggest network of SMEs, is that the European Commission is emphasizing the importance of the social innovation. Social innovation are in a way neglected still in our mainstream policies at the moment in Serbia and in the region, although it is emerging topic at the EU level. And what is promoted is that actually innovation process should be inclusive and open to all citizens. This is related to the sustainability and the sustainable development, which is definitely something which bother a lot of stakeholders at the EU level. And we are still, I would say, lagging behind that concept, I would say that we should really pay more attention to that, and also to support women entrepreneurs, which is only one group among the citizens that could contribute to this process to the innovativeness. And furthermore, we can't all be leaders, of course, and also not all SMEs could be innovation leaders. That's true. But furthermore, they can't be the creators of disruptive innovations. Only a few, even in ICT sector, not all of them. But what should be, from my point of view, the policy is to enhance the innovation management capacity of SMEs in general, at least to become followers. At the moment, it seems not only at our regional level, but also at the EU level, that the policies were focusing to those who can generate disruptive innovations. And this is only a few companies. And the data, of course, are indicating what I'm saying. For example, only 12% of female companies benefited from the innovation funds last year.
That's amazing to hear, but it's not the first time I hear this, that funds are not used to a full extent. I've read that For the agricultural sector, Serbia has not exploited to a large extent the funds available from the EU. And I have a feeling, and also know that it's the case in a few other places. That's very interesting, and that's maybe a point for a different type of discussion, but it's certainly a factor of motivation. Now, Sanja, all you said can without reservation be transferred to our next speaker, to Mr. Zoran Tadic. And Zoran, if I make a checklist of things to be done right, or of positive factors, I can do it with you. I can do it with your company. It's a private company, privately owned, with large investments. You are not in Belgrade. You're in Novi Sad, which fulfills the requirement of not centralizing everything but helping regional economic development. You're operating all across Serbia and all across the region. You are developing, importing, and supplying machinery, high-level machinery from different fields for different areas of production. You will tell us exactly what it is, much better than me. And you're operating internationally. I heard that you're servicing Nigeria from Serbia, which is the first time I hear that a company from Serbia is supervising an African market. So a lot of things done well on the checklist. What's going on in Novi Sad in your company? Please tell us.
So first, as you said, I'd like to thank our organizers, because it was not easy to organize such a big event in the times of COVID. And I'd like to thank personally Mr. Tsomokos for his effort to keep this conference alive even during these hard and strange times. Thank you very much also for your kind introduction of me personally and our company. And regarding business, doing business in Serbia, doing business in region, and since 2016 doing business internationally, particularly focusing on Nigerian market, I would say that we grew step by step. We first served our customers in Serbia, then we actually expanded to Bosnia. Then in 2009, we expanded as well to Croatia. We also have our daughter company in Croatia. But during my postgrad studies at Oxford, I would say that I learned a lot of nice things, nice theories about business, about expansion. And one of the nice words I heard over there was actually the word called glocal. And this is it's actually a combination of global and local. And this was one of the main points where I start thinking, can our company go global? And my master work over there was actually exactly on this. Can small SME from Serbia go global and go to a different continent, and to go to Nigeria as the biggest economy and the biggest country in Africa with 200 million people. And of course, there were few limitations. Of course, it's a big distance. But then I found out using Turkish Airlines, it's only 12 hours flight daily from Belgrade to Lagos. Then is a language a barrier? No, it's everybody speaks English. Even the school system over there is English. And then I found out the rules of the business in Nigeria are quite similar to the rules of the business in Serbia, especially Serbia back in 2006, 2007. And then actually I understood that the limitations are not that high, and that we would be able to go global. And I would proudly say that in cooperation with our biggest partner from Austria, company Engel, that is the world leader in injection molding machines for plastics, we actually managed to make a nice package, and then the customers in Nigeria actually understood the value in investing in a high class, quite expensive, I would say the most expensive equipment. And ROE on those kind of equipment is quite short. And this was the reason why actually I'm glad to say we are quite successful in Nigeria. But going back to your original question regarding region here in Serbia, Serbian industry actually started doing business in plastic already in 1998, 1999, just before the war in Serbia in 1999. And then we also grew up together with market after the changes took place. The democratic government was established in Belgrade. And we found out together with our customer that serving only Serbian market doesn't work these days. You have to go either regional or you have to go global. And most of our customers actually grew with us, and we grew with our customers. And most of our big customers doing business in packaging, for example, most of the packaging products, either cheese or ice cream, actually packed in the packages produced on our machines. So they actually found out the niche market to supply to Germany, to Switzerland, even to Turkey. Some of our customers, like for instance, company Technoplast is the world leader in the electrical enclosure systems for the switch boxes. And if you think that small company from city of Stara Pazova is able to supply big groups, even in Malaysia, even in Australia, from Serbia, that means that we are really all connected. And I would say that most recent world stage event is United States elections. I would say that no matter where you live, everybody was following who is going to win US elections. And even today, there are some questions regarding some people thinking maybe that Trump will manage to do it, whatever. But this actually shows that world is really a global, and everybody has to play its own part. Everybody has his own dreams, but if you dream small, you will really stay local, and you will have no chance to further develop your business. But if you think globally, even if you are a small company and even connected to a wider community that you're actually serving, you will find your way to sell your products and to serve your markets.
I somehow have a feeling it's in your DNA. I was just going to ask where young people can learn entrepreneurship like yours, but I have a feeling it's in your DNA, Zoran. But that's another issue. I would like to enter our full-fledged discussion, exchange of thoughts. Please feel free to interrupt me or to ask questions to the other panelists. But maybe just returning quickly to Kori. You are at SEVES now. SEVES is a think tank, a very important one in Serbia and in the region, working closely with the private sector and trying to improve things. If you would need to make an emergency paper, I'm not talking about the long-term goals. We mentioned them, they're all more or less the same as they were a few years ago. Gender gap, sustainability, innovation, investment. Is there an emergency list of what you would say, guys, it's 5 to 12, now it's maybe even 3 to 12? What is there to be done now, also in the view of COVID?
Well, we are actually very much advocating these days. I hate, and I really don't want to call COVID an opportunity, but money is being spent. We need to prop up demand. It is an opportunity. It's going to be wasted, a lot of it. Many companies that now receive money will not be able to repay it. Not many, because actually, I must say Serbia is being probably relatively less affected, but still there will be losses. Why not be bolder now in helping the digital transformation of SMEs in Serbia? We are still, this is the report of the Ict Hub of Serbia, a country that's only in the first stages of digital transformation of its SME sector. And it is very much, okay, one thing is the top innovative ones, but we need to create this ecosystem that I was talking about, and we cannot just let the industries that are most affected, the hospitality, restaurants, other industries that now could be using funding to adjust their business, why we are not directing more clearly, more massively. You can hear about a program here and there, and then usually you discover it's a donor, an international donor program. It's a question of really showing commitment to certain policies. So that's in the COVID context. But looking even just 2 steps ahead, I mean, we have a fantastic smart specialization strategy, excellent industrial development strategy, also artificial intelligence strategy. But the funding that is going between the 2 funds, the Innovation Fund and the Science Fund, the new Science Fund, are 10 million euros. What are we talking about? If we really want to make the switch that we see is within our reach, and that it is being proclaimed, we need to put our money where our words are. And okay, and again, we have to be careful, and I would love to hear Ambassador Vilan about that, because where we have serious difficulties as an institutional system is our capacity to remunerate merit. So, yes, it's okay that some funding will go to waste. There's no innovation, no research, no creation without trying and failing. But it is also extremely important that it be clear that you cannot just come up with any project and get money. At this point, we are at neither of these two. So the most important thing, if the government is to promote collaboration, promote innovation, put money where its words are, is that it first establishes more systems and trust by the public, which means that it has to also, its actions have to be where its words will be, that what we are doing is our best effort to support through innovative and creative efforts. And for that, we have to have more openness, more dialogue, know who are the best scientists, which are the successful companies that could be partnering with our know-how, which is, as I said before, right now, too separated from each other.
And Ambassador, any thoughts on that? Kori asked, anything you can offer from your experience in Israel?
I asked, how do you know money is going where it deserves to go, even though we will see 25-50% of it fail?
Well, look, I think part of innovation, and this is maybe also big part of the success story of Israel, is that we have the willingness for other people, for their own people, to fail. You cannot have the one great startup which will succeed without the 100 before, or I don't know if the numbers are correct, maybe even the percentage is even lower than that. But you need to have this stamina for failure, and of course also economically, no doubt. But I think this mechanism that was built in Israel, I'm sure it generated way more money by now than what the government invested. And I think, maybe the most important thing is to create here the competitive place for this huge world-leading companies to come and invest. I think that's maybe the key in Israel. I think I saw some figures that in our system at the moment, like 70%, which is the highest, is invested by the multinationals. And many of them opened R&D centers in Israel. And again, I think this is a key engine for this whole, economy, this whole, and Serbia, for me, has all the same conditions like Israel. You have the brains, you have the facilities, the academia, the technology, and I hope you also have the understanding that as a small country, you have to think broad and on export and how to. The market here is too small, and that's what we realized in Israel from the very beginning. Israel was an export-based country even before the high tech became the main part of the export. We exported oranges before we exported the information technologies, because we understood that if you want, as a country which has very little of natural resources, if we want to create industry, we have to be based on export. So I think Serbia, in many ways, has the fundamental needs for becoming a hub for innovation. And again, I think the government should think how. First, of course, as you said, it will have to invest. There's no shortcuts than investing, bearing in mind that not all the money will be used successfully, but it will also have to bring on board, the the world-leading powers from the private sector, maybe also some friendly countries. I hope Israel can be partner for Serbia in creating, this sector in Serbia. But I'm sure it must come with, with the big companies, and they will not come because of the good weather of Serbia. They will come if they understand the potential, the economic potential.
Well, that's one goal of your ambassadorship, if I understood correctly, and maybe you can tell us a little bit later about it. But first, before I turn to with another question to Sanja, I'd just like to share a personal experience. I am here in the city of Hanover, and Volkswagen cars are built all around me here. We have 3 different factories in Wolfsburg and in Hanover. And Volkswagen is a globally operating company, really operating in every niche of the world. Interestingly enough, their only R&D innovation research center outside of Germany is in Israel. There is a small unit set up in Tel Aviv which specifically fosters innovations in e-mobility and other issues that will occupy a company like Volkswagen Group, not now, not next year, but 5 years later or 10 years later. It was very interesting to learn that, and it's stuffed with Israeli management and Israeli entrepreneurs working again globally. But that for me was very much proof of concept of what is going on there. It's called Volkswagen Connect. Great thing to research on the internet, just as a hint. But I'd like to ask Sanja, moving away.
Aleksandar, I must say they're not the only ones. I mean, many of these international companies found Israel is the best place for their R&D centers. Positive. If you talk about the automotive industry, I think the leading country in the world in all these solutions for new way of driving, the automatic cars, or you name it, are coming from Israel. So I'm sure part of what they are doing there is probably on this field of new technologies in this industry. And this is, by the way, I think very important part of becoming innovative hub. You always have to think of the needs of the world, not today, but tomorrow, the day after, and be the first in the world with those solutions.
5 to 10 years, as I said. They must be doing something right. Yes, Zoran.
Just step in shortly, just to a little bit add on what Ambassador Vilan just said. Last year, I was lucky to visit Israel together with my wife, and during that trip, we actually visited my friend, who is also a colleague of mine, the owner of the similar size company like Neofyton in Tel Aviv, selling plastic machineries to all the Israeli customers. But funny enough, the similarly sized company in Israel is actually listed at Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. And this is one of the things that probably Mr. Udovicki wanted to address regarding the smart money, fast money, whatever we like to call it. I would say that Israeli people, they are brave enough, and they have a lot of experience in investing and being able to sometimes even to fail, but nevertheless that will not undermine, they will not make their decision actually shorter, but they sometimes invest for a long term. And this is one of the probably reasons why the IT sector is that much developed, because there are the funds ready, either from the private sector, either from the private investor or the institutional investors ready in Israel to support either small companies or the medium or the big companies. And that would be one of the paths for the Serbian economy, how we can grow up, how we can grow our business, not only following the standard credit lines or the leasing lines offered by the banks, but also maybe to teach Serbian people how to do business also in the stock exchange.
Well, there's a lot to learn from places like Israel and from many other places around the world. But if again we're coming back to the subject of sustainability, if the long-term vision is not there, and I would pick up on what Ambassador said, 5 to 10 years, you have to think of the few ideas of the future. I would like to ask Sanja. I mean, in a previous conversation, once you said to me that the Serbian government and the regional governments are focusing on innovations in the ICT sector, but you don't think that's a sustainable concept. And that social, what you call social innovations, must be much more forced. What do you mean by social innovations?
Well, social innovations actually are something that we are becoming more and more aware on, especially the process of digitalization actually, especially in this period of COVID-19, started to cause some negative impact at the social level, at the individual psychological level, and therefore the emphasis of the EU programs and their policies is to social innovations in sense of creating support to people, to citizens, to actually let's say, to have sustainable life, not only sustainable businesses. For example, it is emphasized that women prevailed in the sector of social services. And there is support to this kind of projects in different way. We in general here in Serbia, but in the region as well, are lacking the appropriate financial instruments to support innovations in general. And the last EU-funded project that we had, if we don't speak about Innovation Fund, which is actually the only one formal source of funding SMEs, we didn't have for several years EU-funded project that supported the SMEs, innovation in SMEs. The examples from Israel is great, of course. Multinationals are seen as the source of technological innovations, but more and more they provide good examples in social innovations in a way that they include their community into their social responsible strategies and encourage the innovations in social care, in of course that inclusive innovation process. It means that they have a mechanism how to involve the citizens and increase this participation of different group of people in the society. I would say that in general, innovation. I'm coming again to the financing of innovation schemes. They should be revised in sense of criteria. Of course, the schemes that support only those who are capable to produce disruptive innovations should be even more promoted, but on the other side, it shouldn't be neglected the support to the innovation capacities of the majority of SMEs who should become at least followers, not the drivers. For example, European Innovation Council, as I wanted to say previously, last year that participation of female companies in the successful applications was 12%, but this year they made 30%. And what did they do? They actually reshaped the evaluation of that applications in order to increase that share. This is a big chance and a big welcome to the companies that been neglected for many years from this innovation funding schemes. And I think that we should think about that and diversify the financial instruments to support on a larger scale companies to enhance their innovation capacity.
And I think if you look at countries like Croatia, who are already part of the European Union, they have now a totally different perspective and totally different ways open for assistance, for innovation programs. And Serbia and the other countries are on the way there. And I think in a very interesting time now, I fully agree with you that should be reinforced by now. I'd like to just return to Ambassador Vilan. Economy has been the main accent of your ambassadorship here. You've opened an Israeli center in Novi Sad, and you're very outspoken on the possibilities that exist between Serbia and Israel. In your eyes, what concrete project can you suggest to work on? I know you mentioned agri sector. I know that Israel is the champion in water recycling. 85% of the wastewater in Israel is recycled, and we have huge issues with environmental points here in the region, if I might say it very diplomatically, looking at the air that we breathe every winter in the region. So what can you recommend? Is there any concrete industry that you would like to focus on while you're here in Serbia?
Well, you see, first of all, what we are talking now, I mean, this initiative with the Serbian government to move to digitalization and innovation sector, definitely we will be happy and will do our utmost to become a stronger partner for the government on this field. And we are discussing already a few options for the coming year. Again, we'll have to see how we are doing all these initiatives under COVID, or let's hope after COVID. So innovation will definitely be one of them. As you mentioned, the water sector was specifically raised when I met the Prime Minister for the first time, that this is one of the topics that she would like Israel to be involved in. Treating water and other solutions for there's a very wide range of needs in this field of water. You know, maybe the best thing in Israel, we sometimes treat ourselves as a live lab. You know, we have tried everything on ourselves. All the creation we came with came out of necessity. So water for us, of course, was a need. It was not just, some scientist thought, well, let's think what we can do about water. It came from pure necessity. So we are definitely looking forward to work here also on water and agriculture. The digitalization of agriculture can be I think for a country like Serbia, even though I know the government is trying, that the IT sector will take over from agriculture, but definitely it's still a very agricultural country. And I think as part of the fight against the brain drain, you need to make agriculture more profitable. And this you can do by adapting technologies for the entire range of agriculture. The whole chain of process have to be more efficient, and that will encourage farmers to look for their fortune in their own farms and not looking for the fortune somewhere else. And it's possible. Around the world, you have rich farmers. It's not a myth.
From bees to hazelnuts, all the sectors.
Yes, absolutely. Once we finish with the the issue of the COVID, the main challenge of the world for 21st century on and others is to feed our population. This growing population will have to be fed. So agriculture and modern agriculture is definitely a huge challenge for the whole world. So I wouldn't recommend any country to give up on agriculture. We should focus on agriculture, but make it much more efficient.
Profitable, definitely. Yes, Kori?
If I would just like to ask the ambassador, I'm dying to ask this and I don't want us to be left without time. You said that the core strategy in positioning Israel was in attracting leading global companies, research centers, and so on. We actually have a surprising number of development and research centers, but it is our impression, I cannot claim this 100%, that they also tend to function in isolation, both from one another and from the rest of the economy.
how would you describe, how do spillovers happen between attracting knowledgeable companies and high-tech companies and what you would call Israeli capital and people? Or is it maybe divided between sectors, maybe in agriculture, which is linked to the land, IT and innovation ends up mostly domestic, whereas, and for example, water purification, whereas some other kinds remain forever foreign owned, or, you know, I'm interested in how does no doubt that we have to be export oriented, but how do you end up making it trickle to the domestic economy?
Look, one of the main tools that governments can do, and that's what our government did, is giving a quite big boost by tax incentives. I remember some years ago, there was a big discussion in Israel when the government decided to it was not just for Intel, it was a law, but, you know, huge tax incentives for many years, like, I don't know, 5, 10 first years for a company like Intel, who opened a huge R&D center and employed a lot of engineers in the city of Kiryat Gat, which is kind of the countryside of Israel. It's not the main Tel Aviv or other hubs. And still public was arguing whether it's a good by the government to give these tax incentives. Now, I think by today, this was not even raised. It was never been raised. You know, it's everybody understands that by the end of the day, it's beneficial for the government, for the people, for the employment in the country. So tax incentives is absolutely very, very important. And you mentioned this issue of the mixing between, you know, I think creating this right ecosystem when many companies are surrounding one by the other, especially in this field of high tech, it's absolutely a plus, not a minus. I think the companies finding it as you know, as important. And yes, there is competition, and, you know, it's easier for someone to move from that company to the other company. You know, my brother used to work in this field for many years, still there, but not too much emotions. You know, they can close the door. I mean, both, by the way, the employer as well as the employees. Close door in one place and the other day go to maybe the competitors, but at the end of the day, this community of companies in same area, for example, in Israel, I think it's mostly in let's say 3-4 main hubs, and you will see that, you know, once one company is there, in a matter of few years, many other companies from the same field, the very same place. So, you know, it creates, at the end of the day, I think, mostly positive atmosphere for positive
energy. I'd like to turn with our last question to Zoran for a topic that is very important in Serbia, and that's production. As Ambassador said correctly, there are some clusters of industries. We have production clusters. There are a few companies producing cables and wires in Serbia, and also automotive industry is slowly shaping and developing, and that's needing technology. There is a saying that the production level is still too cheap now, or too low price oriented, and that much higher investment in machinery like the one that you're dealing with, Zoran, is needed in Serbia. Where do you see that point in Serbia and also in the region? Are we there yet to call companies that produce on much higher technological levels, or is there still a long way to go in technology, in production and manufacturing?
It's a very interesting question you just raised, because it actually, you know, there is this certain saying in business that everybody likes competition. But in reality, nobody likes competition. Everybody likes to be alone in the market and take the much margin as possible. But what is really important point to say here is that competition is always good for high-tech companies. Because our main intention from the day one, what actually the founder of our company, my father, taught me back in 1992, it is always best to represent technology leaders and most expensive machine producers. There are two reasons for it. First, the image is nice, so you will actually, person can represent a high-class, positive branded company. And then second point, the person selling this equipment and the customer using this equipment can really rely on a high technology, high efficiency of the machine, and can actually use the machine for minimum 15 to 20 years. And actually Serbian market and the regional market was actually growing, and as market was growing, we were pushing more high-class equipment into the market. And I must be a little bit arrogant, we also as a company, as one of the leaders in selling high-class machinery, we changed the market. So once some competitor, some of the producers actually introduced high-class technology in their own production, their competitors were unable to compete. And then they were forced to buy machines from us as well. And this is how the market is actually growing. And going back to your question regarding, are we already mature enough to buy only the high-class equipment? I would say yes. And there was the big question back in 2011, 2012. Will investment of Fiat in Serbia mean anything to Serbian country or the Serbian business or the industry, whatever? Of course. The fact that actually Fiat decided to open the factory in Serbia, produce a lot of small sub-suppliers that were actually local and also coming from abroad, all those companies not only brought the technologies, they also brought culture. Not only culture in a wider sense, but the business-oriented culture. When there is a yellow line, you have to follow that yellow line. If there is the feeding station, you have to go there. If there is environmental laws, you have to follow. And security and safety of the workers actually has to be followed. All those small points were actually important. And then from the, I would be a little bit rude saying, from the clean toilets to the clean bathrooms to the clean meeting rooms, everything was changed. So all those people working for those companies mentally made a jump, and they were actually trying to make those standards also in their home ground.
That's Kaizen. We are back to Kaizen. You know, that deserves another panel. I was going to ask you whether, but we are running a bit out of time. I was going to ask the fun question at the end. Yesterday, the fun question at the panel was, will Serbia be in the EU in 5 years? And nobody wanted to answer that, which I kind of understand. I wanted to ask whether you think we will we meet again in Belgrade next year at this time? Of course, we would love to, but will we be at that level of cooperation, of research, of everything that we will meet again? Maybe one of you to answer. Maybe Ambassador, we give you as our guest. We give you the honor of answering. You will be there. Will we meet again? Will we do everything right to be able to meet again next year?
Well, I'm sure we'll meet again, and I think. Again, I strongly believe, you know, I'm a newcomer to this country, but I strongly believe in the potential. It's here. I mean, you know, I wouldn't name any other countries, but definitely there are countries which you might think, well, they don't have the potential for becoming like the next innovation hub. It's not the case with Serbia. I think the fundamentals are here, and the government understands that, and I'm sure. I would also not answer you the question whether Serbia will be in the EU in 5 years, but I do think that Serbia can be in a totally different place in 5 years in terms of innovation.
Israeli poetry says next year in Jerusalem. There's that famous saying, I'd love to be in Jerusalem as well, but the sincere hope is that we meet next year again in Belgrade, live in the Metropole Hotel, with Simeon Somokos waiting for us at the entrance. It's great stuff, you know, embracing us, and that we all sit on that little stage up there. That is my sincere wish. I think our esteemed guest.
Just add one sentence. Not next year in Jerusalem. I hope in the next few weeks. Serbia is going to open an economic office in Jerusalem, and this will help our countries to promote this innovation ecosystem between our countries. So next few weeks in Jerusalem.
Now I mentioned that I'm from Turkey, so I'll be very, you know, pointed now with my answer. Say inshallah. every point. So my answer to that will be inshallah. God willing, giving us good health and being all prosperous and fine. We will meet again very soon, wherever, whether in Turkey, in Belgrade, in Jerusalem, or at another place. Thank you very much.
And crowded. We will want to crowd.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for being with us. Looking forward to meeting you. Sanja, Kori, and Zoran, thank you very much. Again, I'm humbled by hosting such a panel of absolutely being underqualified for following your scientific thoughts. I'm very humbled to be part of this this great thinking here, and it's a true think tank that we've done here. And Kori, we can all continue working with Seves as of now.
Thank you.
The positive thoughts are really there.
It was my honor.
Exactly. I'm handing over to the next panel. We have one more interesting panel to go, which will talk about the digital transformation of Serbia's economy and enterprises. So I hope we have set the stage for Her Excellency Tanja Matic, the Minister of Trade, Tourism and Telecommunications. We've given a lot of important impulse. I hope the Minister and the moderator, Mirko Radonic, can follow on it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, Lehitraot. And
Bye-bye.
see you next year in Jerusalem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Next year.
You were great.